the government, when it set out its so-called roadmap, talked about data, not dates. That was the official line. But in practice, and we've all seen it 100 times, well, 1,000 times. This is what's going to happen on 17th of May. This is what's going to happen on 21st of June. Data, not dates, has turned into dates, not data. And once you set up dates as absolute, people begin to invest in them. They invest in them emotionally, and they invest in them practically. They start paying for holidays. What's more, the government has invested so much political capital that whatever the data, it then becomes almost impossible for them to back out. And as a result of that, they find themselves in an even worse bind, and they deal with that in two ways. The first is by contradictory messaging. So on the one hand, they say, you can travel internationally, and then they say, but don't travel internationally. And then they say, you can hug, but don't hug. And then they say, there are no restrictions into hotspots, but please don't travel in and out of hotspots. So that leads to contradictory messaging, which makes things even worse. And in recent weeks, I think there's begun to be a tendency which is even more worrying. I mean, right from the start, the government ignored evidence. We know that. They ignored it in multiple ways, from multiple people. They certainly ignored it after the 22nd of September, I think it was, when Sage called for a circuit breaker. They waited for 2 months. They've ignored data. Now they're beginning, I think, almost to manage and suppress data. The evidence on infections in schools has still not been released. That the unions and parents have asked for it to be released. They've asked why it's not been released. It seems that Number 10 has been involved in the decision to have it be released. We know enough to know that infections are increasing in schools. The surmise is because it goes against a policy decision which has got little scientific basis to take away the use of masks in schools. So it's beginning to look as if the government actually has got to a stage where, as I say, it's not just spinning or ignoring information, that's one thing. It's actually managing politically the release of information and even suppressing information. I think that's very serious indeed.